Welcome back to Baking Outside the Lines with Lani Halliday. I'm gonna make pistachio apricot oatmeal cookies today. These are super easy, super forgiving. You can make these cookies gluten-free and vegan. Let's get stuck right in. I've scaled out, measured out all of the things that I need for my recipe. So this is the mise en place. Mise en place means everything in its place. I've got sugar, oats, flour. There are no butter and eggs in this. I have subbed out Aquafaba. We're gonna talk about what that is. I'm also substituting a all-natural vegetable-based shortening, and then some other little goodies, molasses, apricots, vanilla, lots of vanilla, salt, baking soda, and some cinnamon, and oats, of course. There's two main ways that you can make cookies. There is the sanding method and there is the creaming method. The creaming method is probably by far and away the most common way that people are familiar with making cookies. You take your butter or your fat, you put it in your mixer or mix by hand, you cream the fat and the sugar together, and then you add your eggs and everything else that's gonna go in there. But that's the method we're gonna use for this. This recipe I adapted from another recipe that I found on the internet. I don't tend to keep like brown sugar around. It's really easy to substitute that out. This original recipe had called for a measure of brown sugar and a measure of white sugar. Brown sugar is essentially just molasses inside of white sugar. And what I've done is figured out how much molasses in relation to sugar I needed, combined all the sugar together, and then just added in a bit of molasses to kind of make up for the brown sugar that I'm not using. So that's my brown sugar and sugar substitute. That's this here. Old-fashioned rolled oats. These oats are gluten-free. Typically, oats themselves are gluten-free, but what happens when oats are produced in the United States is that oats and wheat are sort of rotation crops for one another. So when oats are produced, it can't typically be guaranteed that they are gluten-free because there may be like wheat seeds left over from last year's harvest or the year before. There are farmers who have chosen to exclusively dedicate land to growing gluten-free oats so that folks like me who can't have gluten can have oats. This is the flour that I use. It's the Bob's Red Mill all-purpose gluten-free flour. I've got apricots here, some leavener, baking soda, some cinnamon, some salt, kosher salt, and then vanilla. I've got a lot of vanilla. I'm a big vanilla fan. I think the original recipe called for 2 teaspoons and I put like 3 tablespoons. I'm like, more vanilla. The hero swaps are gonna be these two things right here. This looks like, it honestly just looks like something that was left on your bedside table a little too long. So this is Aquafaba. It's typically a waste product in your home kitchen. It is in fact the drain juice from a can of beans. So cannellini beans, chickpeas are really common, and this magic typical kitchen waste item is a substitute for eggs. It whips up like egg whites. I substitute about an ounce or sort of 30 grams or so of Aquafaba per egg in a recipe. You can make Aquafaba at home. There's all kinds of recipes all over the internet. I'll probably link one below. When I found out about Aquafaba, I literally like called people and I was like, yo, you can whip it. You can make like French macaron. It whips up into meringue. It's really beautiful. It's glossy. It does take some getting used to. It takes a longer time to whip up into a foam, but it's a really incredible, beautiful, revolutionary product. Big fan. The next and last thing that I've substituted, all vegetable shortening and some oat milk. Typical American style butter has about 16 to 18% water content inside of the butter. It's not an oil, it's not a 100% fat product. So when I swap out vegetable shortening for butter in a recipe, instead of 500 grams of shortening for 500 grams of butter, I would take 410 grams of shortening and 90 grams of liquid. In this case, I'm using oat milk as a substitute so that I can approximate this sort of macrochemical makeup of butter in the recipe. We're gonna use the creaming method. We're gonna start by just taking this fat, paddling it, creaming it with my sugar, and just making it like a normal creaming method cookie. And that's it, let's go. Paddle attachment, I've got my stand mixer here. My fat is nice and room temperature. Spectrum Organic all vegetable shortening. It's vegan, it's gluten-free, it's all natural. I'm a fan. When you get it started, you can sort of see it's just like chunky and shaggy, and we don't want it to look like that. We want it to look nice and smooth. I'm gonna give it a little scrape down. I call it the halo. Nobody else apparently calls it that. I scrape around the bottom and I kind of turn it over. From here, I'll add my sugar. Let's go. Start on low and then move up. You can add your salt and your spices and your leavener. I've got my 3 things in here, my baking soda, my salt, and my cinnamon. This can go in now. Gonna scrape it down again. So you can see like it's already kind of changed. Like it's turned this sort of like sandy pink browny kind of color. If you don't turn it over, this is what happens. You get a little like fatty chunk right there, and you get a little streaky chunk right there. And if you're not setting it up for success, what are you even doing? All right, this looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. It's all like a nice even color. It's kind of like this like very little teeny tiny craggy texture. It means it's nice and even and homogeneous. It also means there's like air pockets inside of there, and that's what we want. That's the whole point of the creamy method, is to like incorporate air pockets into the sugar fat mass. So we can keep it moving. The molasses can go in. I'm gonna do the vanilla, my egg substitute, which is the Aquafaba, and then I'm gonna add the flour, the oats, and the oat milk at the end. So it's gonna be like these bad girls right here, and then y'all can wait. All right. When I measure out my molasses into this little container, I don't know if you can see this, but I spray the inside of my little molasses bowl with some like pan spray. It's for the most part just like sliding right out. I'm just gonna kind of give this a little swizzle. Okay. On like medium. This is the Aquafaba. I'm actually gonna like stream it in there. It's definitely changed quite a bit. When you add your egg, or in this case Aquafaba, you can kind of see it's like kind of breaking apart. It looks like very big pores on your skin or something. That's okay, like that's normal. So as long as this is homogeneous and like really well mixed, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So we're in like the home stretch. The last thing that we're gonna do is the flour and the oats and the oat milk, and then the inclusions, the apricot and the pistachio. I always measure my flour by weight. The whole point of measuring with cups is that there's such a huge wide swing. Somebody may scoop a cup of flour and it weighs 100 grams. Somebody might scoop a cup of flour and it weighs 140 grams. This is why people's baked goods do not turn out consistently. It's why somebody who isn't a confident baker can use a recipe one time and have great results, and then the next time be like, it didn't turn out, I don't know why. I'm gonna link below a scale, an inexpensive scale. If you love baking, it is a game changer for baking. I tell everyone, all my private clients, everyone I've ever counseled about baking, how to improve your baking, the one thing you can do is buy a digital scale. Okay, rant over, sift your flour. Because this is gluten-free, like you're not gonna overmix this. You literally can just dump this whole thing in here. Don't stress yourself. Don't stress. We'll put in the oats. Looks like it's mostly mixed. I like to just take a look at it and make sure the little halo at the bottom is turned over. There's no dry spots. If you see a dry spot, that means there's a wet spot somewhere else. Your cookie dough isn't gonna yield equal results for all your cookies. I have 100 grams of pistachios here that I took. I measured out. I toasted in my oven, just like a 350-degree oven until, I always tell people to bake stuff till it's ready. Use your nose, use your senses. When I open up the oven, I hear it sizzling. I can smell the scent of like nice, lovely, lush, toasty nuts in my kitchen. Then I know that they're toasted. So I'm gonna take all these little guys. They're toasted, they're cooled. All right, that looks good. Literally, these can just like, whoop. And then apricots. Low, low. You don't need to like everything, just low is plenty. You're literally just stirring it in. You also don't wanna let that spin too long and stir too long, because what'll happen is you'll start to crush up all your nuts inside of there, and you don't want that. It's done, easy peasy. So one thing you do have to do and make time for with gluten-free cookies, or all gluten-free baked goods really, is time for hydration. Hydration is the process where the binder, so I've got xanthan gum in the mix in the flour that I use. That xanthan gum needs time to sit with all the liquids that we've added inside of this cookie dough and really absorb them and work. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover this and let it sit and hydrate for about an hour, just so I can be sure that everything in here is nice and hydrated and ready to go. She's in there, she's chilling. I'm gonna give her like an hour. It's been an hour. The sun has gone down. I'm gonna take the cling film off. I've got this bad girl right here. I've got this bad girl right here. I'm gonna grab some parchment paper. The oven was preheating. I turned it off so that I could talk to you, but I'm gonna turn it back on while I get these cookies scooped, and then it's gonna go into a 350-degree oven for some time. You probably don't have big pieces of parchment paper like this, but when I have big pieces of parchment paper like this, I have to cut my parchment paper in half. You can do that with a ruler. Chop it, chop it, chop it. To make perfectly even, lovely cookies, I'm gonna use a portion scoop. You can also call these an ice cream scoop or a disher. Scoop inside of here. I'm like really packing this cookie dough into this scoop, pressing it on the side of my bowl, and then I'm either gonna use my finger or the side of the bowl and just level this off. And then I'm just gonna deposit these cookies. These are gonna be monster honkin' huge cookies, which I personally like really big cookies. This is probably gonna take about 10 to 12 minutes. Gonna turn the oven back on right now, pop these in, and then we'll go like that. So I'm just gonna set a timer for probably 6 minutes so that I can rotate the tray. A lot of times in our ovens, you get hot spots and cool spots. You may know about your oven, where the hot spots and the cool spots are. Your temperatures can flare. I always recommend getting an oven thermometer so you really actually know that, hey, when I set my oven to 350, it's 350 inside, or maybe it's 325. You can rotate side to side, and if you've got that oven full of baking sheets, you definitely wanna rotate up and down as well, kind of like mix and match. It's been about 14 minutes. They smell ready. They smell like baked cookies. Ooh, yes, girl. So I'm gonna take these first 6 out. Oh, they're hot AF. Oh, yes. It smells like, oh my God, I just got the shivers. It smells nice and caramely, toasty, oaty. I can smell the cinnamon. They look like really hearty, lovely, like they're gonna be a lovely chew to these cookies. So that's it. We're just gonna let these cool and they will be ready to devour. Like, comment, subscribe.